Yeah. We're having again Jerry Gidel for his weekly commentary, and he's going to speak with us about the ethanol demand and its impact, of course, on farm commodities like corn. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. So, Jerry, how are you today? How do you analyze those ethanol numbers and their impact on the corn price?
Well, this week's U.S. weekly ethanol numbers bounced back to the high side of the recent range we've had, basically from about 910,000 barrels a day to 940, which is a positive sign when there's kind of expectations maybe it wouldn't be changing back to the high side. But the interesting twist on it we're going to end up is the fact that finally, we've got some of the details of how things have been going this summer on the actual conversions at plants. That finally kind of came through with an update on the amount of degenerate, which is their fancy term for gasoline, from the standpoint that when you ship, a lot of this ethanol is shipped by tank cars. And so to make sure that it eliminates fires in that from the point of view that it's highly explosive type stuff, and that you put gasoline in it, that's how you do it. Well, you're going to put it in gasoline eventually anyway. So that being said, it makes the conversion rate of what we see from the EIA less than you think it's going to be. We actually had a number there converted for July at under 2.8, I think it's 2.795, I think it was. The lowest number we've had this year, and actually all the way back to the fall of 2016. And I think that's going to continue for the August number and maybe September. Now, we're going to be getting some September data here real shortly, and that type of number will be kind of an indication here of what's going on as we start the season. But we don't get our good quality corn for this year until we get into October. So, but the key thing is that ethanol has at least given us a high sign about what's been going on here about the 2019-20 crop. We've had ongoing controversy about the USDA's supply demand numbers for last year, when they ended up with a very, very high feed usage number because of the amount of stocks we had at the end of the year. That was a discussion we had here in the U.S. There was a meeting of the USDA and the various people in the trade, including analysts like myself, and they call it the data users meeting midweek. And that was, they kind of hemmed and hawed about this whole issue about last year's quality of crop and that, and we'll find out, I guess, further information about that as we go forward. But in general here, the excitement about ethanol is good. And I get the one hot news today is it came out near the close was the fact that there seems to be an actual tanker of ethanol being sold and shipped to China at just this week. And that's been a long time talked about, that they were going to actually utilize ethanol as a way of trying to meet some of their commitments here. And there's also some talk that some DDGs might be also accompanying that into China. Those high value, I should say, products and things like that will help meet that expanded needs here for exports going forward. So, and that will help us, I think, keep the ethanol output going, because right now things are just kind of running around 10% down from where we were a couple years ago. And so that's making things kind of interesting here if we're going to stay above 5 billion on usage. If we got an export program going, that'll be a positive.
Yes, and China seems to have a lot more demand than we thought, right, Jerry?
Oh, definitely. Things have dramatically changed here since June. At that point, there was not much optimism here in front of us. We had big crops, no demand. But what's happened is that they've had a significant weather impacts, some flooding in the Yangtze Valley, and now we've had typhoons in the Northeast, and so their output potential is limited. I wouldn't say it's crushed, but it's definitely their output potential has been hurt some, and also the fact that their livestock industry to try to expand their pork numbers has started to really ramp up, and now all of a sudden the corn, protein, things like that for a Western style of pork production, which they're going to. There's a lot less corn, a lot less pigs in everybody's backyard, one at a two at a time these days. So because of the issues of African swine fever and that. So I think that's definitely it's changed the whole dynamic of where we've been here just 3 or 4 months ago.
Many experts like yourself are saying that now that China has started to play the game, others are starting to play the game, like Mexico or other places.
Yeah, Mexico, some of our other buyers have come up. That was exactly what happened to us yesterday. Louis, you pointed that right out there, is that we had the very significant purchases from the Mexicans because of the fact that they have been our major source of sales of corn here the last 2 or 3 years. It used to be Japan, but the Ukrainians got some sales in there and that type of thing. And also, they just haven't been expanding their pork and high volume type of livestock and proteins in that. While we've had a big change in the Mexicans getting more money and also going that drought. And now all of a sudden they need to look at buying stuff maybe a little earlier than they think because of the fact that there's a new sheriff in town, as they say, from the standpoint that the Chinese seem to be willing to be a buyer now and want to get it, on the books and also shipped, and so that puts more things in other people's situation. Now we get into, and the one last thing in that is we've had other issues around the world where Ukraine has had some poor weather. Argentina has some poor weather so far on their corn and wheat crops that they plant earliest. And that, so in reality, is our world supplies from other other sources, I should say, are not as strong as it is. That's the thing that should pop up here. There's a lot of indications that Ukraine is anywhere from 4 to 6 million less than the USDA's current estimate, and maybe you're 1 or 2 million less in Argentina. So all of a sudden, if we go down, now we're going to all of a sudden have a number that's going to change pretty quick.
Now, do you think the importers of all this grain, they are importing a lot more this year because they want to guarantee the supply for the coming years, or do you think that is just increased demand worldwide?
Well, I think it's a little of both. I think there's a little bit of I want to get some supplies in hand here, inflationary attitudes, and also I think the whole issue of COVID around the world has made people feeling like they need to have a little more supplies around, and also our production is maybe not as strong. Well, if you think about how dynamically the U.S. expectations have changed from last spring when, oh man, we're going to have 97 million acres and we're going to have 180 bushel yields. Now all of a sudden we've got a maybe a 91 million acre planting, but probably closer to a 90 million when you look at harvested type situation. Plus our yields are not as high as anticipated. So things have changed dramatically in the feed grain world. Wheat, maybe not so much, except right now the wheat market's getting excited about the fact that we've ran out of some rains in the Baltic Sea, and that's a major producer over there. for the world. And so that's been strong because they're concerned about next year's crop. At the same time, what's happened with the corn in the U.S. and China over the last 6 months.
Now let's talk soybeans. I spoke to 5 farmers from the state of Paraná in Brazil, and all 5 out of 5 said that the situation is very dramatic in terms of lack of rain. Mm-hmm. So, do you think that is impacting the market right now?
Oh, it's been a factor in here. Traditionally, the world doesn't get too shook up about a little delay of not having rains in September. Maybe the first week in October, maybe not so much. But since then,
we are starting November, Jerry.
I know, but I'm just saying is that the tensions are now 3 weeks high. Since the first week in October, now we're worried about the fact that it's not being planted. And we just reported, last week was 25% against 50%. This week we might be 40% against what? What do you think? You're going to be normal is like 60, 65, probably closer to 65. And so all of a sudden we're still behind. And I understand exactly your producers down there in Brazil saying, this is getting interesting. Now, the biggest factor in this thing on soybeans in Brazil is the fact that these beans now have to be so many days before they can be harvested. You put them in the ground now, you're not going to have them available in January or even February in some cases. So all of a sudden, that's the window that's filling in with U.S. beans, which was not people's expectations in the past. Well, there's going to be beans available in January. There's going to be lots of beans in February. So we don't need to buy that. That's part of the reason why the Chinese purchases have continued strong is the fact that they realize that the beans that are supposed to be coming out of Brazil are not going to be coming as soon, and maybe a little less too. Now, that's hard to say. Normally, that's not a huge factor on yields unless there's something happens after the first of the year here on weather. But between now and we're talking about rains this weekend, probably going to get things picked up. We're going to get things in the ground, but it's still going to be an ongoing concern. We have not had a situation like this in quite some time. I can't point to the exact year, maybe 4 or 5 years ago where we had something this late, but not recently.
Yes, and since we are talking about soybeans, we have to look a little further into next year. I think by one day next year, Argentinian farmers will start to sell some soybeans, at least some. And what do you think that is going to happen with the market when they start?
Well, the Argentine farmers are an amazing bunch down there. They have a lot more holding power than I think we both of us understood in the past. But in general, yes, there's going to be a time in here when we're going to get some more sales out of South America. And I think the twist of it right now is that we probably have in the U.S. About 4, maybe 5 weeks of really good internal transportation to get it to in export channels so it can then be sent around the world. When December, January, February, that's our winter time, of course, and the U.S. barge system is pretty well shut down except for the Ohio River that provide its beans to the Gulf. So in reality, there's usually a big push between now and first week in December. And so I'd have to say that particular situation and gathering the beans to meet the commitments is still going to be a factor here in price support and price excitement here if there's something goes wrong on things at this point, because right now at least you'd have to say there's a chance the USDA on their November reports could increase exports on both corn and beans. So in general here, our carryover stocks are getting to interesting. We're at 290 and we're at just under 2.2 billion now. And that's the thing that we'll be watching closely as we look into the next week to 10 days before November 10th, when the USDA updates their latest crop production and supply demand numbers.
What have you heard latest on the yields right there in the Midwest?
Well, that's the yields this year have. I guess I'm not in the right category as some people have the pipeline to the field, but in general here, I've definitely continued to hear issues about corn on corn yields not being as good as they should be. I have to say the bean yields west of the Mississippi, where the dryness was there, is not. People are very disappointed, I have to say, in some of the yields there. While the Eastern Corn Belt, the beans have been a little bit stronger, but the corn numbers have not been as strong. I kind of anticipate generalities here that will be down. I haven't got my pencil sharpened up here yet, but it's a bushel down on corn and a half a bushel down on beans. Could be that. It could even be lower than that. I don't know that the USDA is going to really get a handle on this crop until the final number in January, when that is issued after the first of the year.
And what do you expect from the coming week?
Well, last 2 weeks ago, I thought it was sideways and it went up. This last week, I thought it'd go, potentially push past $11. It stopped before that and backed up a little bit here. I kind of feel like it's going to be another sideways game a little bit here as we wait to see where the USDA is at. But I think at the same time, the recent support levels that have come into these markets after really it turned out to be a macro concern here with the U.S. stock market deciding to back up, the energy markets, things like that. Basically, with the investor community, the investment funds deciding that it might be appropriate to be on the sidelines here with the U.S. election on Tuesday of next week.
How much corn is going to cost on Wednesday?
Oh, it's what the corn going to be on Wednesday. Well, that's an interesting idea. I'd say right now that we'll probably be in the 395 to 405. I think we'll be back above, right around that $4 level and that, but I don't know if we're going to be above it. So that's my crystal ball. We'll see if it works, huh?
Yeah, we are recording this and we are going to speak back about it.
I know. That's exactly what I fear. So that's why I'm hemming and hawing here a little bit. But in general, I think the overall trend here is that we still have some optimism through the end of November and that. So we might go, we might not go shooting right up next week or going to new highs. But I think in general, this market's going to be more concerned about what we see here in South America, in Ukraine, what the weather's doing around the world, and of course, how our yields finalize out here as we hear from the country in the next 2 weeks.
And I'm pretty sure whoever wins is not going to be the end of the world.
True. There's plenty. That's the interesting thing about this. I think there's been a lot more, hanging kind of ideas here. Though it's going to be dramatically different if the Democrats win or if the Republicans win. It probably is not going to be as dynamically quick. Everyone's going to then sit back and try to figure out what the next step's going to be on both sides. Right now, the big question is, will the Democrats have all three of the House, Senate, and presidency, or will they not have the presidency or the Senate? That's the big question right now. And we're still debating that here in the U.S.
Thanks a lot, Jerry.
You bet. Good to be with you as always, Louis.